Hello, this is Mr. Stansbury. I'm going to take you through the 7D assignment. All right. First one we got here is number 2. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of the line segment joining these pairs of points. Okay. So, using our midpoint formula, midpoint is simply just adding the two x's together, dividing by 2, and then adding the two y's together and divide those by 2. Okay, so in this case here it's just going to be 6 plus 2 over 2, and then it's going to be 3 plus 5 over 2. So that gives us, let's see, 8 halves and 8 halves, which means that we get 4 is the midpoint. Okay. C, same thing for all of these. So we're going to do 3 plus 0 over 5, not over 5, over 2. And then we've got 0 plus 5 over 2. So that's 3 halves and 5 halves. And you can leave it like that, or you can write it as 1.5 and 2.5. Either one of those is fine. Okay. E, we've got 3 plus negative 1 over 2, and then we've got negative 1 plus 0 over 2, so that gives us 2 over 2, and that gives us negative 1 over 2, so we have 1 and negative 1 half, or 1 and negative 0.5, either way. Okay, and then G, we've got 6 minus negative 3 over 2, and then 8 minus negative 4 over 2. Why am I subtracting these? I should be adding these. What's wrong with me? Let's go back. Let's try that again. So 6 plus negative 3 over 2, and 8 plus negative 4 over 2. That's better. So that's going to be 3 halves, and then 8 minus 4 is 4 halves, right? Which is, again, you can leave it as 3 halves or 1.5, and then 4 halves is 2. So there's that midpoint there. Okay? So these are all of our midpoints. Okay, next problem. Number 3. M's the midpoint of AB. Find the coordinates of B if they give you these things here. So there's a couple ways, really several ways to do this. I'm going to try it this way with you. If we've got, let's just say, I'm not even going to worry if the graph looks right or not. I'm just going to say, okay, here's point A, and that's at 4, 2. Right? Here's the midpoint, which I'm going to call at 3, negative 1. What I'm looking for now is point B. This is what I want. This point right here, right? So we know, here's our line. Ugh, sorry about that. But to get from here to here is going to be halfway. So what I'm thinking of is like, okay, 4 and what gives me 3? So I know that 4 minus 1 gives me 3, right? And then I also know that 2 and what gives me negative 1? 2 minus 3 gives me my negative 1. So to move the x, I've got to subtract 1 to get halfway there. So that means I'm going to subtract 1 more to get the rest of the way there. So I'm going to go 3 minus 1 is 2. That's my x coordinate. And then to get from the 2 to the negative 1, I had to subtract 3. And that gets me halfway there. So I'm going to take my negative 1, and I'm going to go the other half of the way there. So that's negative 1 and negative 3 gives me negative 4. So then my y value is negative 4. Okay? So that's one way to try it. Let's see, C. We've got 5, 1, and then 1.5, 2. So I'm going to try this I'm going to set it up just a little bit different to see if this might make more sense to you or not. But I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to start with my 5 and negative 1, right? And then I'm going to see what I have to add to that to get to my halfway point, which is at 1.5 and 2, right? So I say 5 and what gives me it gives me 1.5. That's negative 3.5, right? And then negative 1 plus 3 gives me 2. So again, this is what gets me halfway. So I'm going to take this here, and then I'm just going to take my 1.5 and 2, because that's my midpoint, and then I'm going to just do this exact same thing here. So subtract 3.5 and add 3. Right? So 1.5 minus 3.5 is negative 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. So that should be my midpoint. Sorry, my other endpoint, which is B. Okay? Okay, let's try E. One more of those. Okay, so I'll show you a third different way to try this out as well. And again, you can kind of pick whatever works best for you. So I'm going to try to actually graph this a little bit more accurately. So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, and negative 1. There's one endpoint. The midpoint is at 0, 0. So my other B is going to, this is halfway there, so B is going to be out here somewhere in here, right? So let's see, this is at 3, negative 1. This is at 0, 0. So I can think of this also. So I need to go up 1. So up 1. And I need to go to the left 3, which is negative 3, to get halfway there. So to get the rest of the way there, I'm going to go up another 1. Right? So plus 1. And then I'm going to go back 3 more, right? So that's going to be at 1 and 1, 2, 3 here. There's going to be my B. Okay, so then all I have to do is figure out what the coordinates are right there. So again, that would be that coordinate right here is going to be at negative 3, positive 1. Okay, so there's 3 different ways to do given an endpoint and a midpoint. Okay, so hopefully all of those are helpful. Whatever works the best for you is fine by me. Number 6, AB is the diameter of a circle that has a center C. Okay, if A is at 5, negative 6, and then B is at negative 1, negative 4, find the coordinates of C. So let's try to draw a picture. That's as good of a circle as I'm going to get here. Okay, so again, I'm not going to worry too much about these all being in the exact right spot here. Let's just go with, let's just call this A, which is at 5, negative 6. And then this is going to be B, which is negative 1, negative 4. Right? And it says find the AB is a diameter, so it has to go right through the middle of the circle, right? So it says find the coordinates of C. Well, guess what? If it's a diameter, the midpoint of the diameter is always going to be the center of the circle. So we're just going to find the midpoint of those 2 points. Okay, so we'll go 5 plus negative 1 over 2, and negative 6 minus, plus negative 4 over 2. So that's going to be 4 over 2 here, and that's going to be negative 10 over 2. So that's going to be 2, negative 5 is going to be the coordinates of the center of that circle. All right? Okay. Moving along. Number 7. PQ is the diameter of a circle whose center is 5, negative 1/2. Find the coordinates of P given that Q is negative 1, 2. So this is just like the problems we were doing a little bit earlier, where they gave you the midpoint and they gave you an endpoint. You had to find the other endpoint. So the center is at 5, negative, I'm going to go 0.5, and then given that Q, we'll just put Q here, call that negative 1 and 2. And then we have to find P, right? Let's see. Yeah, find the coordinates of P. So we got to figure out what this one is here, right? So again, I'm going to start with the endpoint, negative 1, 2, and I'm going to say, okay, what do I need to do to that to get to the midpoint, which is 5 and negative 0.5. So negative 1 and what gives me 5? I've got to add 6, right? Will give me 5. And then 2 and what gives you negative 0.5? That's subtracting 2.5. Okay, so that means I had to add 5 to the x and subtract 2.5 from the y to get halfway there. So I have to do the exact same thing to that midpoint. So I'm going to start with 5, negative 0.5, and I'm going to add 6 to the x and subtract 2.5 from the y, and that'll give us 11, negative 3 should be our other endpoint there. Okay? Okay. Let's see. Number 8. Line segments AB and CD bisect each other at T. Find the coordinates of C. Okay? So we can find this by, let's see, if we have this endpoint and this midpoint, we can find that endpoint there. So this midpoint here is this of this line here is the same as the midpoint on this line here. So let's find that. So midpoint of A and B, midpoint of AB is going to be negative 3 plus 5 over 2. And then we've got negative 1 plus 3 over 2, right? So that's going to give us 2 halves and 2 halves, which is 1, 1. So this point right here is 1, 1. Okay? So to get from here to there, we'll be halfway, and then we'll do another half to get the rest of the way to C. So I'm going to go with, I started with 2, 0. What do I have to add to that to get to 1, 1? So I have to subtract 1. 2 minus 1 is 1, and then 0 plus 1 is 1. That gets me halfway there. So if I start with the midpoint, 1, 1, and I again subtract 1 and add 1, that should get me the rest of the way there. So that's going to be 0, 2 should be point C right there. Okay? All right. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Last one. Number 10. Use midpoints to find the fourth vertex of the given parallelograms. Okay? So, let's see. What we're going to want to do here is find this midpoint here, because that'll be the same midpoint as it is to get to this point here. Okay? So, let's try that out. So midpoint of AC, so we'll go 3 plus 8 over 2, and then we got 0 plus negative 2 over 2. So that's 11 halves and negative 2 halves, so that's 5.5 and negative 1. So that's the midpoint. So then to get from, here to here, to the midpoint, which we now know is 5.5 and negative 1. So to get to that, we would do, let's start with 2, negative 1. What do we have to do to that to get to 5.5 and negative 1? So 2 plus 3.5 gives us 5.5, and negative 1 plus 0 gives us negative 1. Right? So now we're going to do the same thing with starting with the midpoint, which is 5.5 and negative 1. Now we have to add the 3.5 and add the 0, right? So that gives us a 9 and negative 1 should be the midpoint for A. All right, for B, we're going to want to do same idea, find the midpoint of S and Q. So we'll do 4 plus negative 2 over 2, and 0 plus 5 over 2, so that's 2 halves and 5 halves, which gives us 1 and 2.5. Okay, so that's the midpoint. So then we can go from, start with negative 1, 4. Okay, and think, okay, what do we got to add to that to get to 1 and 2.5? So negative 1 plus 2 gives us 1, and then 4 minus 1.5 gives us 2.5. Okay, so then again we start with that midpoint, which is 1, 2.5, and then now we got to add 2 to the 1 and then subtract 1.5 from the 2.5 to figure out what the other endpoint is. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2.5 minus 1.5 is 1, right? Okay, so there's the other endpoint, that's R, right? And then this one over here was D. All right, last one here. So find the midpoint of this one here, which is negative 1 plus 3 over 2, and then 5 plus negative 2 over 2. So that's 2 halves, and that's 3 halves. So I'm going to call that 1 and 1.5. So that's the midpoint right there. Okay, so let's see, we're starting at 0, 4, and we want to end up at 1 and 1.5. So 0 plus 1 gives us 1. 4 minus 2.5 gives us 1.5. So then we go to the midpoint, 1 and 1.5, and then we got to add this 1 here, and then we got to subtract 2.5 here to get to that, to get to this x endpoint here. So that's going to be 2, and then 1.5 minus 2.5 is negative 1. So point x is at 2, negative 1. All right? Okay, that's all we have. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask in class. Thanks.